Welcome to Unbound, the podcast with Beth Curry, author, storyteller, and survivor. This is where books meet real life, where Beth reads chapters from her work and breaks free from the traditional audiobook format, diving deeper into the personal experiences, lessons, and liberation behind every page. Nothing is off limits. Let's get unbound.
Hello. Welcome back to Unbound. This is Off Script, episode 2. The episodes where we step away from my mom's story and talk about whatever the hell I feel like talking about. Today we're doing a mix, which means this could end up being a longer episode, but hopefully I'll keep you interested enough. I'll be answering some listener questions, talking about tattoos, because apparently my elbows have become a topic of discussion also, and diving into one of the most fascinating cold cases I got to work on over a decade ago. That case was the Sumter County Does, 2 young people who were found shot to death off a quiet South Carolina highway in 1976. For decades, nobody knew who they were. They had no IDs, no fingerprints on file, no families that came forward. They were buried under headstones that read simply male unknown and female unknown. Let's talk about mystery, persistence, doctors in British Columbia, and how this case finally got resolved after all those years. Plus how it led me down to another rabbit hole all the way to Australia. But first, I'm going to tackle some questions and talk about tattoos because apparently that's where we're starting. So Jim has returned with another comment. He listened to episode 1 of Off Script, and I have to read this to you because it kind of made me laugh. So he says, after listening to your Off Script episode 1, I had to browse your pics and see your elbows. That also makes me wonder what the tattoo on your arm says. So first of all, Jim, I'm glad my elbows didn't disappoint. I mean, maybe they did. I don't know. Don't know if I have many pictures of my elbows. I did mention in my last episode that I was told I have trustworthy elbows, and apparently that was intriguing enough to warrant some investigation from Jim. So the tattoo, I am assuming it's the one on my left forearm that you're referring to. I shared a picture in the Facebook group of the tattoo on your comment, and for anyone who's not there to see that, it's just a fine line tattoo in a pretty little script that says we're eagles of one nest. The nest is in our soul. This is one of the last lines from the Led Zeppelin song called 10 Years Gone. And if you know that song, you know it's about lost love and looking back, about connections that shape you even after they're gone. That tattoo is tied to another decades-long friendship that I've held, and it has much deeper meaning that I probably can't fully share here at this time, maybe someday. But know that it represents a bond that's meant kind of everything to me through some of the darkest and most complicated periods of my life. Basically, the TLDR of it, my interpretation of the lyrics, my interpretation of my tattoo. It's not just a statement of love and connection with another person, but to me, it's also kind of a reminder of the unity and the responsibility and shared destiny of humanity. You know, kind of, we're all eagles of one nest. Anyway, let me tell you about my other tattoos while we're at it as well. My very first tattoo I got when I was 35, which is late, I know, but I'm not entirely impulsive about permanent body modifications, apparently. That's a lie, actually, because during my teen years, I pierced the shit out of my ears. I have 8 holes in my ears. I haven't pierced anything else, though. But I remember that was during a time when my sister was getting a whole bunch of tattoos and stuff, and I just was not committing to ink at that time. So I just decided to keep going back for piercings. The first one, it's on the back of my neck. It's the Chinese symbol for faith. Now, people are often hesitant, I think, to get Chinese symbols because they're not always sure what the symbols really mean or if they're correct. Like, you don't want to walk around thinking you have strength tattooed on you when it actually says barbecue chicken or something like that. I think I heard about that one somewhere. I had confirmation from one of my besties, Kelly, her husband. He's Chinese. So, what better source to confirm that for me than him? Completely accurate. So, felt pretty good about it. But my heart still sank several years ago when I was leaving LAX. And there was an adorable family behind me. They were flying home. No, they had just flown in from China and they were flying on to Toronto. And they asked about my tattoo. And the guy asked if I knew for sure what it said. And suddenly, like, I was second guessing everything again. Like, I was completely mortified. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's he going to tell me? Turns out he was just fucking with me a little bit. After playing with my anxiety for a minute, he confirmed that it is indeed the correct symbol for faith. Faith is a big concept for me. Season 3 of the show will better explain what faith means to me. It's complicated and personal, and I don't know, it doesn't really fit into those neat pretty little boxes, I also adopted a cat after losing my second pregnancy, and I named her Faith. That loss, that grief, that reaching for something to believe in when everything else felt impossible at the time, that's what faith represents to me entirely. I also have the warrior tattoo on my inner right wrist, and the I is a semicolon. This tattoo was done in solidarity for the same person I mentioned with the Led Zeppelin tattoo. The semicolon has kind of become a powerful symbol in mental health awareness. If you don't know this already, it represents a sentence the author could have ended, but chose not to. So like a pause and not a period, right? It's kind of intended to mean your story isn't over. So for anyone struggling with mental health and suicide ideation and depression and addiction and all of that stuff, the semicolon is kind of a reminder that you're still writing your story. The sentence continues, right? For those of us supporting people through these struggles, it's a symbol of solidarity, as I said, of saying, I see you, your story matters, and don't end that sentence yet. I have 2 more planned tattoos I would like to get done soon. I was going to get one of them on my most recent stay in LA. That seems to be where I get my tattoos all the time. Not quite sure why, just kind of happens. But I just didn't have the time when I was there a few weeks ago. I won't get into what those will be just yet. So yeah, that's the ink. Now you know. Yeah. And I'll get to the other suggestion from a listener after I tell you about the cold case thing. So I want to talk about the Sumter County does. I've kind of been looking forward to talking about this again because I haven't talked about it in a long time. So August 1976, 2 young people, a man and a woman, were found shot to death off a highway in South Carolina, Sumter County. For decades, nobody knew who they were. There were no IDs, there were no fingerprints on file, and the most shocking part to me, no families that came forward. It just absolutely baffles me, and it's haunted me from the moment I started digging into it. Like, how do 2 people disappear so completely that nobody reports them missing? Like, nobody misses these people at all. Like, not for weeks, not for months, not for years, not for decades. How does that happen? How do 2 human beings vanish from the face of the earth to somebody, and not a parent, not a sibling, not a friend, not a coworker? Nobody says, hey, where did they go? Like, I'm a mom. I can't even fathom. I can't. And even now, after they've been identified, there has been shockingly little acknowledgement of that. No flood of news coverage, no family members coming forward with stories about who they were, just silence. Just silence. And that silence is almost more disturbing than the mystery itself to me, Theories filled the gaps over the years, of course, hitchhikers, drug couriers, lovers on the run. Some people thought they might be from Canada or Europe because of their clothes. Others were convinced it was some kind of cult killing. Like it's just like, it was their faces. That's what caught me the most when I was going through it. Like, there's a warmth there, even in the old black and white pictures, something human, something that said, we mattered. And this case was literally as old as I am. So I was born in 1975. They were found in 1976. So for my entire life, these 2 people have been waiting for someone to figure out who they were. So getting into the files, I was pretty fortunate to work with some amazing people on this. Out of South Carolina, Verna Moore, she was the coroner. She retired by the time I really got super involved, like right around the same time. She was an absolute wealth of knowledge because she was just as invested as I was in this. Sheriff Anthony Dennis and Robert Burnish were always willing to talk to me, even when I was asking what I'm sure were incredibly stupid ass questions. But that's the thing about cold cases, right? Sometimes the stupid questions are the ones that actually crack things open. I got access to the files. I started reading and rereading and reading again because, sometimes you miss things the first dozen times through. There was this one reference that kept nagging at me. So someone at a pool hall had supposedly heard the male victim say his name was Jock. Now, most people had assumed that was just a nickname, but what if it wasn't, right? What if the guy at the pool hall had misheard? What if his name was actually Jacques, French, not a nickname, right? So that single possibility sent me down a rabbit hole that consumed weeks of my life. The Jacques theory made sense for a few reasons. The victim's clothing had people speculating they might be from Canada, and there was this kind of persistent detail from witness statements. The young man had mentioned his father was a doctor and that he had disappointed him and was disowned because he didn't follow in his footsteps. I heard rumors that were never confirmed that this might be why the OPP had gotten involved at some point, and that's how I got my hands on all the stuff, was through the OPP. Again, I don't know if that's actually true, but it kind of gave me some direction, right? So I started digging through these Canadian records. I was looking for doctors whose last name started with F because, remember, actually, I didn't mention this. The male victim had a ring on him with the initials JPF engraved on it. And that's when I found him. Dr. Robert Roy Forsey. Now, his obituary stopped me, not just because of the name, but because of what it said about his family. So he had been chief of dermatology at the Montreal General Hospital. He was respected. He was accomplished. The kind of father's footsteps would be hard to follow. His obituary mentioned he had a daughter named Jane, who did follow in his footsteps and became a doctor. And it also mentioned a son named John. So Jane and John and JPF on the ring. Chief of dermatology, Montreal General Hospital, the Jacques connection. Like everything was lining up, this French Canadian stuff, in a way that felt like almost too perfect. So I reached out to some experts, people I know, people who specialize in comparing bone structure and facial features and all the technical stuff I don't fully understand but trust implicitly. I sent them photos of Dr. Forsey, photos of his daughter Jane, the forensic sketches, the postmortem photographs of the unidentified male victim. And they all came back saying, this is worth exploring. Because the bone structure and the jawline and the eyes, there were enough similarities that professionals, like people who actually do this for a living, were excited alongside me. So that was pretty cool. You have to understand, what that feels like when you've been staring at a dead end for so long and suddenly there's a door, suddenly there's a little teensy bit of momentum and people who've been working this case for years saying, holy shit, like you might be onto something here. That feeling of maybe, just maybe, being the person who gives these two people their names back, like that's what makes this kind of stuff really addictive. Of course, in hindsight, I was chasing ghosts. The Forsey connection didn't really pan out. The DNA didn't match. Records didn't align. All those exciting similarities were just like these massive coincidences. The universe of dangling, the cruel way of dangling hope in front of someone desperate to solve a mystery. But, dead ends teach you something too. Like every false lead gets you a little bit closer to the truth, even if it's only by ruling out what the truth isn't. So, it matters. The habit of searching, the instinct to follow one thread and kind of see where it leads, it doesn't go away just because one theory collapses either, right? So anyway, in 2021, the answers did finally come. They were identified as James Paul Freund and Pamela May Buckley. So after 45 years, they had names again and histories again. Not male unknown and female unknown, not Jane and John Doe or Jacques Doe or whatever they were calling him. Real people with real lives that mattered. And yet, even with their names restored, there's been so little said about them. No flood of family members sharing memories and no retrospectives, about who they were before they ended up on that South Carolina road. It's just silence. Like, I haven't been able to find anything. And it's so sad to me. How did two people disappear so completely that nobody missed them? Like, not in 1976, not in 1986 or 96, like not until 2021 when forensic genealogy finally gave them their names back. Like, were they estranged from their families? Were they running from something? Did someone deliberately ensure nobody would come looking? I don't have the answers, and the silence that still surrounds them even now suggests that I'm probably never going to get them. Um, what I do know, though, is that James and Pamela deserved better. They deserved to be missed. They deserved to have people asking questions decades sooner. They deserved more than to be remembered primarily as a mystery rather than as human beings, right? That should have been the end of my search, but if you've ever fallen down one of these holes, you know how it works. One mystery closes, another one opens its hand, right? Cold case research isn't tidy. It's kind of a web of tabs and notes and, wait, where did I see that moments? And you follow one link and stumble into 10 new questions. Somewhere along the way, you kind of realize you're not just looking for answers, you're trying to make sense of loss itself. And that's how, while following threads from Sumter County, I ended up across the world in Australia staring at another disappearance that had me completely puzzled. So this guy, Jack Henry Bell Chambers, was born September 17th, 1949, and 26 years old when he vanished. He was last seen on August 10th, 1975, again, just a couple months before I was born, when he boarded a boat of some sort at Pittwater, New South Wales, with 4 other people. Their names, Howard, Virginia, Allison, and Leanne Williams. Their vehicle and their trailer were found abandoned at Church Point, but none of them, not Jack, not the Williams family, they were never seen or heard from again. No wreckage, no communication, just nothing at all. And I still always wonder, how does this happen? It's not just one person. We're talking 5 people. What the hell happened on that boat? Were they caught in a storm? Was it something more sinister? There is not much out there. There's been, barely a handful of mentions in old reports, not enough people asking questions, and that haunts me about cases like this, not just the mystery of what happened, but the silence that follows. The way that some disappearances just kind of fade into the background noise of history. 5 people on a boat that never returned and just decades of nothing. So I'll probably dig deeper into the Pittwater disappearance in a future episode because, there's something about that one that won't let me go either. Sometimes these cases take you where you never expected to go. You start with one story, like these 2 in Sumter County, and you end up halfway around the world. Every unanswered question, though, leads to another door, and behind every door is a human being who absolutely deserves to be remembered, in my opinion. So James, Paul Freund, and Pamela May Buckley got their names back after 45 years, and that matters. Somewhere out there, 5 people who disappeared off the coast of Australia in 1975 are still waiting for answers. Moving on. I had a comment in the group from someone who asked to remain anonymous, despite the fact that he posted it for everyone to see. But I know that's him just being silly. He says, "You went on and on about your one friend. You should tell everybody about the others." Fair enough. So let me tell you about the rest of what I like to call my 4 quarters. If you've been listening to me read all these beautiful things, you've heard about one already, and that's Kelly, who I've mentioned in the earlier chapters. Sally is another, and her chapter is coming up. Both will feature prominently in my upcoming book and season 3, of Unbound, which is The Other Side of Quiet is the book. So like I said, I call these people my 4 quarters, although I've only mentioned 3 so far. As I've gotten older, I've kind of learned that I would rather have close friends who truly matter, people who I can invest my best into, than waste my time on 100 pennies, 100 acquaintances who probably wouldn't have the energy for me when it counts and who I couldn't possibly spread myself all around. So I see it as quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. 4 quarters make a whole dollar instead of 100 pennies scattered across the table. Kelly's been in my life for close to 50 years. She lived next door. She was an infant. I was a toddler. We've been together through literally every joy and heartbreak that life brings, right? Every milestone, every crisis, every ordinary Tuesday that turned into something meaningful just because we were together. Sally moved from across the pond when we were in grade 7, and it's been the same thing. All the good, bad, and ugly stuff that life throws at you. Both of these women are oxygen to me. They are genuine, kind, caring, all the good things. They build other women up. There's no gossip. They support, they fill my heart when I see them, truly. These aren't friendships of convenience. These are people who show up, who remember. They call you out on your bullshit and they still love you to bits. They celebrate your wins like they're your own, and they sit with you in the dark without trying to fix everything. That's what quarters do, right? They have weight and they have value and they matter. The remaining quarter, well, he's off in a galaxy far, far away right now. I'm not sure discussing him would keep him from cursing me for it, so I will tread lightly. I will say this. I met him and his brother and their family in 1992 when they lived across the street from me and my family. We were very close for so long, through so many ups and downs and twists and turns that life threw at all of us. He played a really major part in my weight loss journey back in the day. He was instrumental in my foray into forensics. He was a police officer for almost 30 years, and watching him work and hearing his stories and kind of understanding the why behind what he did, that shaped a lot of who, I wanted to be. We kind of started a business together, but I'll admit it was more him than me, obviously, because he knew what he was doing. That's the business I do all my time filler forensics administrative bullshit with, and actually where I got a lot of the info on the Sumter case. He was my hype man when I needed one, my reality check when I was spiraling, my partner in crime for adventures that probably weren't the best ideas, but made for some great stories. He's always in my heart, no matter where he is. Distance does not change that. Time does not erase that. Whatever galaxy he's exploring now, he's still one of my 4 quarters, and he's still part of what makes me whole. We've all had so many good times together, so many memories that I could fill an entire season of this podcast just unpacking them. Like all the real friendships, we've had our share of friction too, the ups and downs that come when you actually give a shit about each other enough, to be honest, even when it's hard. Yeah. Quarters, they're not shiny and new, right? They get kind of worn down from use, and they carry marks and scratches from all the transactions they've been part of. This comparison is so cheesy. But yeah, they never lose their value to me. So there you go, my 4 quarters. Kelly, who's been there since before I could form coherent sentences, and Sally, who chose to be my friend in grade 7, and she never unchose me. And the one who's kind of out of sight, but never out of mind, and who still holds a permanent place in my heart. Yeah. So 3, Nate, Sally, and Kelly, I can talk about freely, and 1 I have to hold a little more privately, but all 4 are equally essential. Again, I would rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. Honestly, these people know me completely. They've seen me at my worst. They still show up. They've celebrated my best without jealousy or competition. They understand that friendship isn't about constant contact, but permanent connection. So, yeah, they make real change for me. They've certainly changed my life. Before I wrap up today, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of my listeners. Her name is Aggie. Aggie has been sending me $2.75 with a note that says, "I enjoyed this episode," after every single episode she finishes. Every single one. It's the sweetest. Look, I had to reach out to her and ask her, "Aggie, you don't have to pay to listen, right? The podcast is free. There's no paywall. There's no subscription required." But what she shared with me, it broke my heart in the most beautiful way. So Aggie is 84 years old. She definitely needs her $2.75 more than I do. She's in the unique and devastating situation of caring for her daughter, who was diagnosed with dementia last year. Apparently the decline has been rapid, and she listens to Unbound with her, and they're both kind of finding comfort in my mom's story. And she told me she appreciates that I'm reading the book without expectation of compensation, and she wanted to be fair to me because she's not actually buying my book. She wants to support my work because it's helping them through their own incredibly difficult journey. So, Aggie, I'm sure you're listening right now. Thank you. Your generosity and your kindness mean more to me than you know. I just want to be absolutely clear with everybody here. This is not a ploy to get support. This podcast is free. It will always be free. There's no expectation that you pay anything to listen. I am taking the hit financially for this because I think that these stories that I am sharing should be accessible to everybody. So that's all. But if you do want to support the show, if these episodes are helping you, if they're making you feel less alone, if they're giving you tools to navigate your own dementia journey, whatever, then yes, any support makes a real difference in keeping the show going. But please know it's completely optional. No pressure, no guilt. I know I mention it at the end that the information is in the show notes. I have to say that. I don't enjoy it, but I do. So anyway, Aggie's situation, caring for her daughter with dementia, like that's something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. We think of dementia as the old person disease, and statistically, yeah, the risk increases dramatically with age. Most people diagnosed with Alzheimer's or other dementias are 65 and older, but early onset, diagnosed before age 65, it affects hundreds of thousands of people. It's even becoming more common right now, which is terrifying. And when it strikes someone in their 40s, 50s, or early 60s, it's often, more devastating because these people are still raising kids and they're still working and they're still in the prime of their lives. But can you imagine being a parent watching your child go through this? I can't. The natural order is supposed to be that children care for aging parents and not the other way around. I think the grief of watching your child lose their memory and lose their independence and lose themselves while you're in your 80s and facing your own physical limitations. I can't even fully imagine that kind of heartbreak. So Aggie and anyone else out there caring for a child with dementia, I see you. This journey is already impossibly hard, and you're walking it in a way that defies, the expected order of things. You're doing something extraordinary, even on the days when it doesn't feel like you are. So thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing this journey with me and my mom. And again, thank you so much for your incredible generosity. Okay, now again, before I go, let me see something for a future off-script episode, a wild story about me and Peg Entwistle. You're like, who the fuck is Peg Entwistle? If you don't know who she is, she was a Broadway actress in the 30s. And after a disappointing stint in Hollywood, she climbed to the top of the Hollywood sign and jumped to her death. She's become a tragic icon, a common popular ghost story, the lady of the Hollywood sign. If you're on my social media, you saw a picture of me standing in the middle of the road with the Hollywood sign hovering over me. I was standing in front of Peg's home that she lived in on that fateful day. And I have a story connecting me to her that is, it's wild and probably too complicated to get into right now, but someday I'll share it, I think. If you don't already detect the level of crazy coming off of me, this ought to do it. It involves Los Angeles, synchronicity, and one of those moments where you realize, again, that the universe has a deeply weird sense of humor. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks so much for listening to Off Script. I think this was probably shorter than I expected. I thought this was going to go long. I thought I might ramble even more than I did. If you have questions for future episodes, drop them in the Facebook group. Apparently questions about my elbows and tattoos are fair game. So really ask whatever the heck you want. And that's it for today. Support info is in the show notes if you want it. But again, zero pressure. Just keep listening if these stories are helping you. Also, join the Facebook group for discussion. Okay? And I'll see you in the next episode. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Unbound with Beth Curry. Join the conversation in the Facebook group or visit author.bethcurry.com. Want to support the show? Head to ko-fi.com/unbound podcast. Until next time, stay unbound.